Hello, friend. Welcome back to another video. Today's video is kind of exciting. It's a tutorial slash paint with me video. I really wanted to create a really sweet, really cute scene that anyone from beginner to intermediate would have fun painting. Or, if you're advanced and you want to just paint something simple and relax, please join me today. Today's video is going to be this cute little autumn scene with a cute little cat. The brushes I'm using are the Miko roll brush. It's from the artist Angry Miko here on YouTube. He's got some of the absolute best painterly brushes here I probably have ever used. They really mimic the look of like real life texture in paint, and because I feel like the Procreate brushes leave a lot to be desired, so when I found his brushes I was over the moon. But you are definitely free to use whatever brush makes you happy. I will suggest though, when it comes to the actual painting and blending part, to use the same brush to blend with that you're painting with. It just keeps a very a uniform look through the strokes, and it'll give you a prettier result at the end. My goal here, especially with, I've always wanted to create tutorials because I felt like when I started painting, there weren't a whole lot out there on YouTube, especially for digital painters that want to create paintings that look realistic, that mimic natural acrylic or oil paint. So I am so excited for you to join me. I will try to remember and review everything I did. Every new step and new thing that I add to the painting will be on a new layer until the very end, but I'll explain that later. So here I'm switching over to screen record. The very first thing I did was drop, and it's a very limited color palette, this light periwinkle blue shade, and I'm adding another shade for later, but I took the very lightest color and I dropped it into the whole thing, took that slightly darker, more saturated periwinkle, and with a light to medium pressure, went over top and started blending it out. And it's done with the same brush. You'll also see that I have Miko Roll Test, and it's the same brush just with less flow. That way I get a better opacity. But here I'm just going in and with a different size brush, lightly going in and blending some of those areas out to get a nice gradient. I also like to twist my screen too, so you'll see me doing that a lot. So here we're adding another layer. I'm also using the Apple iPencil 2 too. I find it to be the easiest. So this layer is going to be starting the mountains, and that's why I added that dark blue, and I forgot to add that color to my palette earlier. But with this, you want to kind of avoid making pyramids for mountains and more of just like really or I guess you could kind of look at it as making like scraggly looking pyramids that don't have any. You want to avoid angles. Anything that's sharp, it's going to look unnatural. So some of this is going to be hidden by trees later. Just continue down the page. Just kind of not really looking to be too perfect around the edges. Just kind of creating some block shapes in for mountains. Scraggly pyramids. So here I'm just kind of dragging that blue down because there's going to be trees in front of it, and I kind of want a base for those trees to sit on. I also duplicated that layer to make the edges darker and to get rid of some of the texture. So you'll see me here in just a second. The easiest way to clean these edge lines up are to take the erase tool with that same Miko rule brush, so that way the strokes match when you go to erase it, and just kind of clean it up and take some of the symmetry and the sharpness away from the edges, because you want super soft mountains in the background. This is kind of a fun learning experience for me too, because every single one has been different, and I've been trying to like streamline the process for it, but I had a lot of fun with this, and I really hope that you do too. I wanted something super simple to follow and easy enough that if you were a beginner, you could pick this up. I also wanted to mention too, because I forgot this earlier, if you're looking for the same colors that I used, you can always screenshot the palette at the very beginning. So here I'm going in just kind of building up the area that I got rid of too much, but I don't think it's going to matter because I think the tree is going to go over it later anyways. But here we're going to add a new layer. over top of that and start taking this like taupey beige color over the top, and that's going to give us a little bit of dimension. It's going to kind of give the appearance of snow, and like the mountains themselves are receding a little. It'll really help add a lot of depth later on. And I'm kind of just with the dragging motion, dragging that brush down a little bit to kind of give a little bit more color. In here, we'll go through and start blending this out a little bit with that same Miko roll brush in a larger size and a lower opacity with a very light touch, kind of just dragging it down and kind of dragging the color up and down. We kind of get this nice like snowy effect with it without having to do a whole lot of work, which is why I love this brush so much. I think it's a really great to paint with, and the texture really mimics real life paint. And think out of a lot of the brushes I've used, the stamp itself looks amazing up close, because you don't want to be, I am always the one who has like pinched my drawing and am as close as humanly possible to it, just to make sure there's nothing weird sticking out. And I always look for brushes that look smooth far away and smooth close up, because if it looks smooth close up, it's going to look great far away. So here you'll see me just kind of with a dragging motion going up and down, creating some texture in there. We don't need anything too like smooth. You don't want to blend all of your color away. That blue around the edges at the bottom is going to be the base for some trees here coming up. So you kind of want to leave a little bit of the darkness there, so that way the green really stands out against it. And there you saw me. That's one of the only layers that I combined down. I combined them together so that way I could go back and erase those edges up and clean them up and make them a little bit sharper. I find it really helps in trying to leave them separate and trying to erase without ending up with that dark blue color underneath peeking through. So I find it easiest to just kind of to combine them down. Once those layers are combined down too, it'll be really easy for you to go back in with the eraser brush in the same Miko roll, and kind of just carve out some of those areas so they're not so smooth. Because sometimes when you go back through and blend, sometimes they do end up getting, they look a little too symmetrical. And mountains are anything but symmetrical, so you kind of want to get rid of that look. I also wanted to kind of go in and make some of my mountains a little bit more craggy looking too. Give them a little bit of a rougher edge. So you'll see me going in and just kind of erasing some of those edges, and carving them out a little bit more. We're about to start the trees here, and you'll see me take the darkest shade of green in a new layer and just start sweeping it across the mountain area. I ended up going up a little bit too high, so here in a second you'll see me move it down. But basically we're creating a dark navy-ish blue and a green. I'm not trying to define any shapes right now, but the cool thing about this, yep, and here I'm moving it down. When you go to take the blending brush up and down, you'll start getting a lot of color blends in the middle that you wouldn't ordinarily get if you were like trying to create those colors. So I think I took it to like 70 or ish so opacity with a medium-ish size brush, and just taking a sweeping side to side and up and down motion, kind of just going in and creating some trees. Now the really cool thing that's very similar to physical painting is that when you take the blur brush with the same brush that you're using to paint with, you can get some really interesting depth and blends over top of the mountain area, since it's a bluer too, and it'll create kind of like a distance. So you're creating depth within depth, if that makes sense. But here we're kind of just going out and creating some treetops, blending it in with the deep navy of the bottom. And that was an oops. I don't know how many of you guys too, like in the middle of drawing, your eye pencil will change what brush you're using in the middle. It's so annoying. But here we're going through and adding a new layer, I think. Oh no, we're going in and duplicating it. So we're going to duplicate it and take the opacity down. We want to make it just a little bit deeper and a little bit darker, but we don't want to completely get rid of the depth underneath. And I took it and I moved it down just a little bit, just to make the mountains appear a little bit taller. So here we're going in we're adding a slightly lighter green over top in a new layer, and we're just going to kind of go in and start blending that out. We kind of want to just add another layer of depth of trees over the top, defining some shapes out, adding just a little bit lighter area because that'll be where the sun touches, and it'll be the area that's the most lightest and brightest. And you'll see me kind of just with a sweeping motion going up and down and side to side, just to kind of blend those areas out. We don't want to create anything too dramatic. We want to keep this painting really soft and really easy, nothing too crazy. I also took it and lowered the opacity a little bit. I felt like it was too bright. I did combine these two layers down too, just so I could go in and start adding some more shapes in it and getting some more of those pretty blends. I don't know. I just really like the color that green makes over top of that like periwinkle blue color of the mountains. Just creates a lot of really pretty depth underneath. Kind of see me just going back and forth and back and forth. There's a lot of repetitive movements. It's so relaxing doing this. You kind of just can zone out and not think too much about the world. Here you'll see me kind of going through and defining the top and the bottom a little bit more, creating some tree shapes. Creating those like sudden downward movements will create the impression that there are like shorter trees there up at the top. And then we're kind of going through and creating some shapes in the front too to give the impression that there are trees in front. I always find too that the things in the background that recede are always lighter than the front, so the front trees need to be just a little bit darker. That way it gives the impression that, you know, they're receding a little bit. So here in a new layer, we're going to start with that beautiful like pumpkin-y gold and orange as the base of the ground. And I think in the one that I did, if I were to redo it again, I probably would leave a little bit more of the orange showing. But here in just a second, you're kind of seeing me go through and just smooth it over a little bit. And then adding the like sunflower yellow over the top to create the impression of kind of like a dying field or some golden grass. I love this time of the year. It's so pretty outside. It's unlike any other time. And you're going to go through and kind of just blend and blur these areas out. We want a little bit of texture. That's why I have the opacity down, because I don't want like the full smoothness. I kind of want a little bit of that roughness. But you'll kind of see me go through here in just a second and start blurring these areas. So here's kind of creating the impression of the grass line, and you don't have to be like too careful or too like perfect or precise with it. Just with a light touch going up and down. And the fun thing that happens too when it's in layers like this is because the opacity changes when you like that stroke goes over top of it, the darkness from the trees underneath creates more tonal changes, which is it's so pretty. I don't really have any other words for it, but it creates a really nice contrast. It creates a nice uniformity through the painting. That's the word I was looking for. But here, so with a really light hand too, you're going to go through and just create that same up and down, side to side, light-handed dragging motion over top of all of this yellow area, just to kind of give the impression of grass. We don't need anything too like precise or perfect yet. We want the impression that there's texture there, and the texture will eventually look like a field. So we're about to start the barn. The easiest way to start the barn is to draw a square and then to draw a triangle on top of the square. I find that to be the easiest way to create the front of the building, and then just take the drag and drop tool and fill it in. And we're going to kind of go through and just sharpen the edges up a little bit, make it a little bit more square. You can always use the liquify tool also to help move any lines you don't like, but I ended up just painting them on. We're also going to add a little side building next to it too. The easiest thing to do for that is just to paint a rectangle next to it. And apparently I can't draw a straight line today, so we're going to go through and kind of just clean that line up a little bit. I always find architecture to be one of the hardest things because the lines have to be so straight or it looks all kinds of wiggly. But we're going to go through with that slightly lighter beigeier pink color. And for the roof, we're going to kind of just draw a trapezoid of sorts over the top. And I can already see that's a little crooked. We'll fix that here in a minute. But we're just going to kind of sketch in the shape a little bit and then fill that in. We'll go through with the eraser brush and start cleaning that up. I know my shape is a little wonky there, but you know, if your shape is wonky too, then it'll just be a wonky barn, and that's just is what it is. I also fight like being overtly serious sounding to like really silly, so it's a happy medium. It's a happy blend. And that is the secret to painting as well. It's all in the blending. So here you're just going to see me kind of cleaning up that shape again, kind of tightening some of the lines up. It's not going to matter so much because this barn is going to be far away. And I also wanted to create a cute little door just in that same pinky beige color. I ended up just creating the outline of a square kind of in the center of the red square area, and then creating an X from side to side. I didn't put a bottom on it because it's going to be covered with grass here in just a second. And then taking the sizing tool and then just shrinking it. And that I think is the easiest way to create buildings, especially in the background, or if you've got, like me, I can't see things very well, so I always am zoomed up on it. It just helps me. We're going to place that kind of just in the center there. We're about to put the trees in, so, and then I think I started painting that, realized I needed to put a new layer in. Yeah, that's exactly what I did. So on a new layer, you're going to take that yellow and just draw some grass over the top. That way it kind of just blends with both. And just taking like a really light hand and going through and blending it. Just light up and down stroke lines. I always find too, this is a really good point to either take a small break, I'll get up and use the bathroom. Sometimes I end up with a headache from not moving around. So if you need to stop the video and move around, feel free to go ahead. But we're going to go ahead and start the trees, and I'm going to go out and block them in kind of like a cone shape with a round bottom and with the darkest shade of green. We don't really need to worry too much about making sure the shape is so perfect because we're going to go back in and kind of carve them out a little bit. We just want to make sure that they look like cones. Here quickly, you'll see me taking the eyedropper tool and getting the orange for the path because I forgot to put the path color in my palette. But here on that same layer of the tree, I put that lighter shade of green on the top, just the top part of the tree. And now I'm taking the Miko rule brush. And the only difference between those two brushes is that the test brush has less flow than the other did. So it's going to have more of a harder blend line. And that's just to get some really nice blends in between those. I don't worry too much about the colors overlapping the sky too, because it kind of helps unify the colors of the tree and the rest of the painting together as well. And just taking a dragging motion just up and down to blend those colors out. I find this is probably the most repetitive area. I start with one size of brush too, because we'll go back in later with a smaller brush to add detail areas. But this is just to really blend those areas out. I also like to make sure I use the same colors throughout the palette. That way it's all unified together and we don't have weird shades of green or greens that don't match, because warm greens and cold greens, while they can definitely work in the same painting, if they're too drastically different, it'll look weird. So I just kept with the same shades of green for this painting. And we're basically just doing the same thing with this tree. Here in just a moment too, you're going to see me duplicate this layer too, to make the green a little bit stronger. So I just wanted to explain that, because I know it sometimes when you blend things out, it ends up a little see-through, and that's the real reason for duplicating the layers. Here you'll see me in just a second taking a little bit more green through the middle of the tree too, because I felt like the bottom was still too dark. I wanted a little bit more variation through that. Plus, adding a little bit of lighter color through that will also give you more texture and strokes through the painting itself, and I really like that. I used to be somebody who liked to blend everything out and making sure everything was smooth, but now I really like to make sure that there's more texture. It just adds a little bit more interest to it. And basically just doing the same thing to the other tree. Oh, and here's where I'm duplicating it, so you can kind of see the difference between both, playing with the opacity a little bit. But it really does make the tree more opaque looking. And so here, I'm taking a smaller brush and just going around the edges and blending side to side and up and down. It kind of helps blend with the opacity of the sky. It helps blend the tree to the rest of the painting. And it also adds some more visual interest and some like smaller leaves that would be naturally sticking out on a tree like this anyways. You don't want it too like smooth looking. I mean, if that's what you want, you can definitely make this more like bubbled in appearance, more rounded, but I wanted a little bit more texture. Going around and just kind of following the edge line of the other side of the tree. I really like it, and it's all just a game of opacity, and I think digital painting makes that easier in a way because you can play with it and you can add so much depth and detail when you play with the layering, which you don't get with regular painting. And here we're going to go in. It kind of just zoomed out, taking around the bottom edge of that tree, and now just doing the same thing to that other tree. This is actually my favorite part. It's actually kind of relaxing. I always talk too fast too, so if I'm going too fast, I'm so sorry. I know it's a problem. Zooming up a little bit. Okay, so here's where I forgot to add the stump of the tree. And I dropped a brown in there too because I did forget the brown as well. There's a lot of things I'll forget, and I'm glad we're doing this together and you'll have it as I have it. So underneath the tree layer, I went ahead and put that brown in and then put a slightly lighter shade of brown over the top just so it's not so flat. And then taking the blending brush here and starting to just kind of blend those areas out. Just going up and down and kind of side to side, just to give it a little bit of shape. Oh, took too much off there. And then kind of erasing some of the spots out. And you'll see me here just a second have some issue with the sizing tool. It's just one of those things that, like, once it started happening, I couldn't make it stop. And sometimes, and I remembered, too, at this moment, I had to put my pencil back on the iPad because it started, it was too low in battery, and I think that's what was causing it. So I quickly refilled that and came back. Yeah, I don't know what's going on here. I did some weird, it's just some weirdness, some happy accident areas. Okay, so moving on. So the next thing we're going to be focusing on is the pathway, and we're going to take that pretty pumpkin orange color and start blocking in that shape. I did two like backwards U shapes, and the back area is going to start smaller, and then as we get closer to the front, they'll start to get a little bit wider. A little trick to make it look like the pathway is really receding into the background is to make the mouth of the path, where I'm at right now, a little bit wider than the back part of it is. And then we're going to go through here and start to just widen that curve area up, because otherwise it's a little too thin. And I think I made the back part just a little bit too thick, but we'll figure it. We'll get to clean that up here in just a minute. Sorry, I don't English so well sometimes, but we're gonna go in and kind of just, I think I just decided to make that a little bit thicker. There we go. Yes. Kind of looks like an M, actually. It kind of looks like an orange version of the Golden Arches. So we're going to take the blending brush and kind of just with a light pressure, drag that across the edges. We want a little bit of the texture from the brush. We just want to get rid of the harsh line. Later on, we'll add some grass strokes over top to help it blend with the field. But right now we're just getting rid of any harsh line because we don't want it to look like the path is sitting on top. This is kind of a rustic country path, not a freshly like mowed lawn kind of path. So definitely a little bit more loosey goosey, I guess. Still going in and just blending those edges out. Really just making sure that there's a softness to it so it matches the rest of the painting. So here I'm adding a new layer. We're going to add a little bit of that golden orange color from the underneath and change the opacity down, take it down just a little bit to like, I don't know, 40–50%. That way we kind of create the start of a little shadow underneath of those trees. That way they look like they're, the sun's hitting them and they're casting a little bit of a shadow. And with a medium to light pressure, just lightly blending those out. So this is the area of the painting that I decided I really wanted to add a couple of things to it. And the first one being my cat. So I've kind of got a running joke with all of my paintings, especially my landscapes, that my cat appears in some of them. And she's this really cute black cat. And I really wanted to add her to this painting. So if you want to skip this step, you can. But I personally love cats and I wanted her in my painting, so I added her. But starting off with like a deep navy blue. I didn't go with black because I felt like black looked too harsh up against this color palette. So I picked the navy, like a deep navy blue color. Actually, I think it was the same blue that I used for the trees from earlier in the painting. And then I created in a second layer, I took that same round shape, made it a little bit wider so it's like a long oval, and then placed it underneath. Super duper easy. And then just kind of filled that shape in a little bit, rounding off the head a little bit more. I always feel like getting that angle right is difficult. I don't know why I was going to put an ear there, but that's not where the ear goes. That's where the cheek is. So I just collapsed those. That way I could more easily change the shape of it. And then now I'm starting with the ears and then just drawing two little triangles. And making that area a little bit more round because I think I made that little area a little too wide actually. And kind of just finished cleaning up those edge lines a little bit. So now I'm going to draw the tail in. Oh, apparently I can't draw a straight line today. Everything's a little bit wiggly. So we'll go back in and correct that here in just a second. But if your tail is wiggly and you like it, please feel free to leave it. I'm just, I'll pick at it until it's straight. So we're going to go back in and clean up that line just a little bit. And I'm just using the eraser tool just to clean up those edges. And I'm using kind of a smaller shape to clean up those edge lines. So zooming back a little bit, it's time for the feet. And the feet, I kind of like to think of as upside down L's. The short parts up at the top and the L parts at the bottom. And I think that creates a really cute shape for a cat. And now it's time for the front feet. And the two front feet are just two regular L's put next to each other. And the fronts of them, like the bottom part of the L is just a little bit shorter to make the paw. And I lifted that one up just a little bit because I thought it was cute. But next we are going to, instead of taking and merging all of these layers for this painting down, what we're going to do, and this is something I just found out about, is to copy the canvas and then hit paste. And that will copy all of the layers into one layer. That way you have something new to work on. And I feel like it's the best way to work on your painting without ruining what you've already done, just in case you don't like it. You're working on a copy instead of the original. So in a new layer in the soft light tool, you're going to go in and use the color black. And I know it sounds crazy, but it's actually not going to appear black. You're going to take that color on the base of the trees, the little bit in the background in the barn and the base of the painting, kind of just, it especially on the top and the bottom, it really helps to draw the eye into the center of the painting. And then with the blur tool, you're going to go in and lightly soften those areas up. This is one of my most absolute favorite ways to add more depth into a painting without ruining what's underneath. It just helps to add a little bit more contrast, a little bit more depth and shadow to those areas that may have been a little bit flat before. It really helps to make it look a little bit more 3D, without, ruining what you've already done. And this works for highlights too, and you'll see me here in just a moment. We're going to do a highlight layer. But really going in there, and softening those edges of that new black layer you just put in. We're just kind of, I think I used a medium to large brush with low opacity. Here we are going into, and I'm adding a little bit more to the path. I didn't like the shape. It got a little bit too loose there. So I'm just going in and softening that up a little bit. I also don't like to paint paintings that too vibrant to start off with. That way I can adjust and make it more vibrant as we go along. Because if you start off with colors that are too bright, there's not a whole lot more that you can do with it. There's not a whole lot of places to go with it. So definitely start off a little bit softer. So here you're going to see me adding another new layer to it with the overlay tool instead. And we're going to use the color white and just kind of make some scribbles in areas that light would naturally be hitting. Going to add some highlights to those fields. And I promise as soon as we get to the blending stage, it won't look that crazy at all. So we're going to take the opacity down somewhere between 50 and 60, and then we're going to start lightly blending those areas out. And I think I used a slightly larger brush, with pretty high opacity, because especially with the overlay tool, sometimes it can be a little harder to blend than with soft light. But I mean, you can already see the difference in the lighting there. It really adds a little bit more depth to those trees. Just really going in there and softening those lighted areas up. I think we're starting to get a cute little painting there. This is one of my favorite highlighting features too, because you don't have to like guess at what the highlight color will be. If you use white and use the overlay tool, you get just a natural looking highlight as it would be anyways. It's definitely one of my favorite tools for portrait work too, because you can add so many pretty highlights with the overlay tool and the soft light tool. If you guys would like to see like a paint with me, with a portrait, please let me know in the comments. I think that would be a lot of fun. I think we're going to go ahead and do that anyways, but definitely one of my favorite tricks to add highlights. So here I went ahead and just copied the canvas. That way we had a new canvas to work from and everything below is protected again. One of my most absolute favorite things to do, because I've had times where Procreate will glitch and I'll end up with like blank squares in my painting, and I've learned my lesson with that, and always make copies of everything you're working on. That way, in case a layer is ruined, the painting's not ruined, and hours of hard work is gone. So here in a new layer, we're going to start adding stroke lines for grass. And don't worry if this takes you a little while. This is a very monotonous thing. This will probably take the most time. So what you're going to do, you're going to create another copy of this canvas, and then taking a very small brush. That way, in case you don't like the lines that you're making, you're not working on, you've got a copy of the painting. So on the new copy, you're on the copy itself, you're going to take a small brush and start flicking upwards in like side to side and kind of up and down motions. That way it kind of gives the impression of grass. I redid this a couple of times. I painted on top of it once and then I didn't like it. So I went back and did it this way, and I ended up really liking the result better. So you're just going to go through and add little stroke lines all over the place. But basically, you're going to do this all over the gold and the orange areas. Make sure to add little lines underneath the trees to kind of help the trunks blend in with the rest of the grass, to make them kind of look like they're sitting in the grass rather than on top of the grass. Make sure to do lines on the pathway in the back, kind of blurring that out a little bit too. That way the field continues in the background as well. Really just taking it and adding cross-hatching pretty much everywhere. I guess that's the word I'm looking for, cross-hatching, but very lightly. You want a little bit of texture, not too harsh, but you definitely want more of a distinct line than in other areas. And here in a little bit, we'll add a new layer. Oh, I guess we're doing that now. We're adding a new layer. We're going to take the brightest shade of yellow, and we want to just add some detail grass lines, some extra little bright patches here and there. But I went through and added a little bit of brightness in the back. I felt like some of that area was starting to disappear a little bit. So I went through and added some more detail strokes. And I guess I didn't like what I did there, so I'm going to erase it. But we're basically doing the same thing. I didn't like the color of it. That's what I did. So I went through and added some more gold to the background, just to kind of make those areas a little bit more distinct. I don't know what word that is. And going back through. And that's the beauty of working in layers, is that if you don't like it, you can get rid of it. And it's so much more forgiving than like a traditional oil or even acrylic painting. And that is one of the things that I love most about digital painting. It really saved my butt. I've got some lung and breathing issues, and when I couldn't oil paint anymore, this really saved me. But I'm just kind of going in there right now and adding some more highlighted areas, kind of just add some nice visual interest in the shadows. I absolutely love playing with the contrast of light and dark. But going through, we're going to add a new layer here. I think something else too that didn't get shown was the areas of yellow we just put in. We're going to lightly blend those out as well. I forgot to add that in there, so I'm sorry. So starting with a brand new layer in overlay, we're going to add the white and just add little highlights over top of the trees. I just wanted a little bit more definition in those areas. And here in just a second, we're going to copy the canvas again. Here we go. I'm going to change the opacity down. Now copy the canvas, paste, and now we have a new painting to work on, and we're going to go through and just lightly blend those areas out with a smaller brush, kind of create some new visual interest and texture in the painting. And I think it was here I wanted to go through too and add some more stroke lines into the rest of the painting as well, kind of just give it some more fun and more texture. And we're going to do that here on the second tree. I love this technique because it really allows you to save the underneath painting in case you don't like what you do. I went through too and added just a couple of areas at the bottom, just adding a little bit more definition. About to move on to the second tree. There we go. Yep, and just basically doing the exact same thing to the second tree, just adding some more visual interest, some more stroke lines. I really love this brush too. I can't say enough how much I love it. It really, if there aren't a whole lot of brushes for me that I feel like move like real paint, and this just does it for me. So I hope if you get to use it, you end up loving it as well. So here I decided, and this is one of the most important reasons why it's important to work on a copy instead of the real, what you've done underneath. I went through and added a little bit more stroke lines, some more detail, strokes over top of the background. Really kind of adds. And then I went through and kind of blended the trees into the sky a little bit. It kind of pulls those two colors together too. It helps with the cohesion of the rest of the piece. Kind of pulling up that second tree a little bit too. And then I added some more stroke lines in the mountains. Went through with a bigger brush just to kind of create some more just fun little lines in it. Going through the top, the sky area. Now going through and adding some more stroke lines in the grass, kind of blending out those areas a little bit more. I left them a little unfinished before. There we go, adding a little bit into the pathway. So upcoming here too, we're going to add another layer, and we're going to put it in overlay, take it in black, and go over the top of the bottom, the top and the bottom again. My words are running together. Sorry, I'm filming this kind of late, and the later it gets, the less coherent I start to get. So, but I wanted to make sure I get it out tomorrow. So when you see this, I hope you enjoy it. This was a lot of fun for me to make. So here I'm just going in basically like before, adding it over the trees and the sky and the base, just to create a little bit more depth. I really wanted a little bit more purple in the sky because in the autumn time, those purples and blues are so beautiful. The skies are crazy in the winter time. We get some absolutely beautiful sunsets. I feel like in the summertime we get more beautiful clouds, but in the wintertime, the sky is just gorgeous. So kind of just going in and deepening the shadows up a little bit. And I quickly got that dark spot off the top of the tree. We wanted to keep that bright. I did catch that. And that's why layers are amazing, because we can get rid of that. And I thought I was going to duplicate it, but I decided not to. So I'm pretty happy with this little painting. I had so much fun with you. I hope you enjoyed this. If you decide to paint this, definitely tag my art Instagram, and that's at Timstar Studio. And if you want to see more tutorials or paint with me, please like and comment and subscribe. And I'd love to see what you guys do. So if you paint it, please tag me. I always like to sign my paintings too on the left side and the year. I always like to use my I like to use a color in the painting, that way it's not as it doesn't interrupt the painting. Something else I kind of like to do too, and it's a little secret, sharpen your painting up about 40–50%, and it really helps to make those lines stand out and look more like a traditional painting. But thank you so much for watching, dear friend, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.